Welcome to the dense, humid forests of Maryland, 1850s, where the night air is heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, where shadows stretch long across worn dirt paths, hiding secrets that no map can chart. You can almost hear it, the soft rustle of leaves, the faint snap of twigs under careful footsteps, and the whisper of a name carried on the wind. Tubman. Harriet Tubman. A woman who moved like a shadow, a figure unseen by the plantation masters, yet known by all those yearning for freedom. She walks alone tonight, or so it seems. Her eyes, sharp and scanning, reflect the faint glimmer of lanterns swaying in distant cabins. There is a rhythm to her movements, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat that measures the pulse of those still trapped in the fields. Behind her, unseen by the world, are the ones who follow. The frightened, the weary, those whose lives teeter on the edge of fate. Each step a gamble, each breath a prayer. They call her Moses, whispered in hushed tones across quarters and cabins. Some say she knows every creek, every hollow, every hidden path that leads north. They speak of nights when she disappeared for hours, only to return with those who had vanished. Returning from the darkness with faces full of hope, or eyes wide with terror, forever marked by what they had endured. And tonight, as the moon breaks through the canopy, as the wind sighs through the branches, there is a tension that cannot be named. A silence that presses against your chest because something moves here in the night. Something older than the plantation, older than the laws that seek to bind them. Something alive, watching, waiting, yet guided by a woman with no title, no authority, only purpose, only courage. Before we step further into this journey, before we follow the hidden trails carved through swamps and forests, take a moment, breathe, and imagine yourself in their shoes. The fear, the hope, the uncertainty, the thrill of escape, the constant shadow of danger. This is no story of fiction, no tale of imagined heroism. This is history, lived, felt, whispered, and sometimes lost. The path begins here, with footsteps in the mud, a lantern in the distance, and the quiet resolve of a woman who would not let others remain in chains. Watch closely, listen carefully. The night is full of voices, and one of them is calling for freedom. It is the spring of 1851. Maryland awakens under a soft gray dawn, the mist clinging to the rolling hills like a shroud, the air thick with the scent of wet earth, pine needles, and the lingering smoke of last night's fires. In the distance, a river threads silently through the landscape, its surface broken only by reeds, fallen branches, and the occasional ripple of a fish. This river, it is both barrier and pathway, a lifeline for those seeking freedom, and yet treacherous for the uninitiated. The plantations stretch across the lowlands, fields of tobacco, sugarcane, and corn, their green stalks glinting under the weak sun. Enslaved laborers move rhythmically through the crops, hands calloused, backs bent, the occasional grunt of exertion, the soft sigh of wind through the leaves, every sound measured, every movement a silent language. The overseers patrol their boots, crunching on the soil, eyes sharp but blind to the whispers that slip through the shadows. Among the cabins, the quarters are dense and close, low wooden structures with smoke curling lazily from chimneys. The smell of cooked beans, cornmeal, and firewood fills the air. In the faint light, women and children move quietly, mending clothes, tending fires, fetching water, their faces etched with both fatigue and a glimmer of hope. The men repair tools, sharpen blades, or move silently between rows, every action deliberate, each step weighed, for the world beyond these fields is alive with danger. Harriet Tubman moves through this landscape like a phantom, small in stature but immense in presence. Eyes bright scanning, ears attuned. She memorizes every detail of the terrain, the angle of a ridge, the twist of a creek, the smell of mud after rain. The forests are her allies. Dense with underbrush, where the sunlight barely penetrates. Moss drapes from the branches. The ground is soft and uneven roots ready to trip the unwary. But to Tubman, each path is familiar. Each hidden nook a waypoint. Each shadow a signpost. The whispers begin at dusk. Muffled voices speaking names. Moses. Tubman. She comes tonight. The children pause mid-play, staring at the trees as though expecting her to emerge from the mist. Women glance toward the woods, hands tightening over their work hearts, quickening with both hope and fear. The air itself seems to hum with anticipation, a rhythm not of the day, but of the night of movement unseen, of journeys undertaken in silence. At the edges of the forest, the paths are narrow, almost impossible to traverse without knowledge. The river's ford is shallow in places, deceptively deep in others. Current swift enough to carry the unwary away. Every night she times the crossing with the moon and the tide. Lanterns' extinguished eyes adjusted to the darkness. She leads her group silently, feet wet with dew, clothes snagged by brush. Her patience is infinite, her vigilance constant. Each pause a measure of safety, each glance a calculation of danger. The plantation transforms at night. The labor and chatter of the day, replaced by stillness punctuated by nocturnal sounds. The distant cry of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the creak of a cabin door. Every sound is amplified in the night, every shadow lengthened. And in this world, Tubman moves as both guide and protector. A single misstep could spell capture, punishment, or worse. Yet her resolve is unshakable. The lives of those who follow her hinge on her knowledge, on her courage, on her ability to read the landscape as if it were a living map. Above the stars shimmer through the gaps in the canopy, constellations unseen by the captors below, and she uses them as markers, as reassurance, guiding those in her care with a combination of instinct, skill, and memory. Every night the forest becomes a stage, every shadow a curtain, every sound a signal. Each person following her feels the weight of history pressing upon them, yet also the possibility of liberation, however distant. And as you picture this, the sweat, the fear, the hope mingled with the scent of pine and earth, the quiet of the quarters, the hush of the fields. Understand that this is not myth, not exaggeration. This is the world in which Harriet Tubman navigated. Every decision measured, every step deliberate, every breath a negotiation with fate. The night holds secrets, and she knows them all. The path to freedom is not a straight line. It twists through mud river crossings, forests thick with undergrowth, hidden cabins and allies waiting silently. And in this delicate balance between danger and hope, Tubman is the fulcrum, the axis upon which countless lives pivot. Step by careful step she moves, silent, deliberate, unyielding, guiding the desperate, the frightened, the hopeful, into the promise of what lies beyond the plantation walls, into the possibility of life. The journey into the unknown begins here. In the dim candlelight of hidden cabins, in the whisper of the wind, through dense Maryland forests, in the official notices that marked lives lost, captured, or vanished without trace. The newspapers of the time recorded the stark reality. Runaway slave advertisements listed men and women by name, age, height. Fate unknown. Escaped into the woods, last seen near the river bend. The words are clinical, devoid of emotion. Yet they carry the weight of terror and hope intertwined. Each notice a silent testimony to lives constrained. Each phrase a breadcrumb that only the brave or desperate could follow. Harriet Tubman appears repeatedly in these documents. A woman of small stature known to guide escapees from plantations in Dorchester and Caroline counties, referred to as Moses. The reports, though sparse, hint at nightly treks through swamps and thick forests, crossings of treacherous rivers, evasion of patrolling overseers and bounty hunters. Each line in the record suggests pursuit, but cannot convey the skill, the vigilance, or the intuition required. It cannot record the silent signals she used, the unspoken communication that saved lives. Beyond the dry, factual records lies the folklore. WPA interviews from decades later speak of Harriet Tubman vanishing into the trees, only to reappear hours later, leading others to freedom. Her footsteps barely touching the ground, her eyes scanning, alert, aware. Some say the wind itself shifted as she passed, leaves rustling in patterns that warned the frightened of her approach. Others claim the songs she sang were not merely for comfort, but signals-coded melodies that communicated safety, danger, or distance to those in hiding. The juxtaposition is deliberate. The cold, impersonal facts of the bureaucracy against the living, breathing stories told by the people. In one account, a child recalled her mother whispering, "Moses will come. She knows the paths where we cannot be found." In another, an old man described the tapping of a cane on a wooden floor, each strike a message to be deciphered. The leaves that seemed to move with intention, the lanterns glowing faintly in hollows, all part of a secret network. Real yet invisible to the outside world, the danger was ever present. Slave catchers patrolled the fields, bounty hunters sought reward, betrayal lurked even among acquaintances. Yet folklore transformed fear into a system of signs, survival, and guidance. Stories spoke of the midnight footsteps of paths illuminated only in memory, an instinct of encounters with strangers who might be friend or foe. In these narratives, the line between supernatural and skillful human calculation blurred. Whether by intuition or otherworldly aid, Tubman navigated her charges through a perilous landscape. And then there are the rivers, shallow in some places, deep and treacherous in others. Currents strong enough to sweep the unprepared away. Her knowledge of tides, moon phases, and river bends was unmatched. Official records cannot capture the nuance of timing, every crossing of gauging the weight of bodies and bundles across unstable logs or muddy banks. Folklore fills the gaps. Tales of her pausing midstream, listening to the water adjusting course silently. Moments when the forest seemed to hold its breath, as if nature itself was in league with her mission. The songs she sang carried double meaning. Melodies that soothed frightened hearts, but also encoded information. Some reports note that the notes were faint, yet carried far riding on the wind. Enough to alert those hiding in attics, barns, or hollowed logs. Without these signals, lives would have been lost. Freedom delayed. Every tone, every pause, every whispered word was measured. Each carrying instructions, encouragement, or reassurance. The folklore tells of hearts beating in sync with the cadence of the song, of hope growing even in darkness. The network of allies was as crucial as the terrain. Safe houses, sympathetic families, hidden rooms behind false walls. Letters exchanged in secrecy, instructions carried in quilts or simple objects. These are documented in part, but much is lost. Folklore remembers what official records omit. The courage of strangers, the small gestures of protection. A pot of stew left on a doorstep, a lantern hidden in a hollow tree. Each act of bravery woven into the tapestry of survival. And within all this, Tubman's figure dominates the stories. Eyes bright in moonlight, cloak brushing the ground, hands steady, walking stick ready. She moves silently, deliberately, calculating every step. Her mind a map, her memory a compass. The records mark her influence. The folklore breathes life into it. Together they form a rhythm, a pulse, a cadence of fear. Courage, calculation, and hope, The facts provide the bones, the folklore, the blood and spirit. Each life she guided carries this rhythm, each escape a testament to skill and humanity, even when captured in part by law or press. When she appears as a figure in reports of pursuit, recapture, or disappearance, folklore transforms these moments into legend. The tapping of the cane, the glow of lanterns, the movement through shadows. These elements, both real and imagined, ensured that those fleeing could trust the signal, the rhythm, the presence of someone who understood the forest, the rivers, and the dangers of the night. And as you listen, as you imagine the smell of pine, the damp earth, the hush of fields at night, understand that every recorded fact, every legend, every whisper, every note sung softly in the dark, carries meaning. The line between history and memory, fact and folklore is not a boundary, but a bridge. And on this bridge, Harriet Tubman walks, leading, guarding, guiding, every step deliberate, every breath measured, toward freedom. Night descends fully upon the Maryland forests. A thick, almost tangible darkness pressing against every branch, every leaf, every shadow. The air is cool now, damp with evening mist clinging to skin and clothing. The scent of wet pine, damp earth, and the lingering smoke of distant cabins mingles in a heavy perfume. Every step is muffled against the soft, uneven forest floor. The fallen leaves rustle faintly, betraying nothing to the untrained ear. The group following Harriet Tubman moves silently, bodies low, eyes wide, hearts hammering against ribs as if threatening to betray their presence. A child stumbles over a root, the sound barely perceptible, but enough for a quick glance from Tubman. Her hand shoots out, steadying the child, gripping small shoulders firmly, eyes sharp in the half-light, scanning the tree line, calculating, always calculating. Every movement measured, every pause deliberate. The men and women in the party adjust their steps accordingly, matching her pace, attuning themselves to her rhythm, the rhythm of survival, the rhythm of escape. They reach a creek swollen from recent rains. The water is cold, dark, rushing over stones with a deceptively smooth surface. Tubman kneels, assessing the depth, the current, the placement of hidden stones. Her fingers trace the water's edge, every ripple telling a story. She signals with a barely perceptible nod. The group steps carefully, one at a time, feet sliding in mud boots, snagging roots, cloth brushing against branches. The tension is palpable. Every step could betray them. Every misstep could mean capture, punishment, or worse. Suddenly, a distant bark cuts through the night. Sharp, urgent. A patrol dog likely alerted by the slightest movement. Tubman freezes. She crouches, assessing direction and distance. The group presses themselves against the undergrowth, barely breathing. Shadows stretch unnaturally under the moonlight, each one a potential threat. Each second drags on, the pause almost unbearable. The air feels alive, every rustle, every whisper of wind, carrying meaning. And yet she moves first, slowly, deliberately, guiding them to the safety of the far bank. Beyond the creek, the terrain rises sharply into a ridge. They must climb silently. The soil loose, the incline steep. Branches claw at clothing roots, reach to trip. Every footfall calculated, every breath a risk. Behind her, children clutch hands, men support the elderly, women soothe the frightened. Soft whispers of encouragement, a reminder of the courage within them. The folklore of the night intertwines with reality here. The forest itself will guide you, some say. Follow the footsteps of Moses, and you will not be lost. And in this moment, that folklore feels real, a living, breathing force surrounding them. The ridge gives way to a small clearing. Moonlight pours down in silvery beams, illuminating tall grasses and wildflowers. The group pauses, listening. A faint voice, a whistle in the distance, likely a patrol. Tubman signals again. A tap of the cane, a movement of the hand. Instructions only they understand. Each person shifts slightly, blending into shadows, bodies tense, muscles taut. The forest becomes a stage of shadows and silence, and every sound carries significance. The children whisper softly, afraid to break the spell of silence. "Is she really Moses?" one asks. "Will we be safe?" another breathes. Mothers place hands over quivering shoulders, humming softly. The lullaby double-coated with instructions, signals, and encouragement. Each small act a lifeline. Each whisper a thread of connection to the possibility of freedom. The air vibrates with anticipation, the pulse of countless hearts in sync with the leader guiding them. They approach a swamp, treacherous, full of hidden holes and pockets of quickmud. The folklore of the night warns, teaches. Step where the water does not pull. Follow the moss on the trees. Listen to the whispers of the reeds. Tubman moves ahead, scanning the terrain, demonstrating the path. Each person follows meticulously, one step at a time, balancing fear, fatigue, hope. Every slip avoided, every obstacle negotiated. Every pause a lesson in patience and vigilance. Along the way, the patrol dog's distant barks come again, a flicker of light from a torch in the distance. The group freezes. Tubman crouches, assessing, calculating. She gestures for complete stillness. The forest seems to hold its breath. The wind carries every noise, rustling leaves, snapping twigs, whispered prayers. Her knowledge, instinct, and intuition guide the group safely past this near encounter. The risk is real, ever present, and yet they press onward, step by careful step. The forest opens once more. A narrow path leads them to a cluster of hidden cabins. Lanterns glow faintly from within. Allies, waiting silently, providing blankets, warm drinks, whispered instructions. Relief washes over them, fleeting and cautious. The journey is not complete, the threat never fully gone, but each crossing, each careful movement, each successful step builds momentum, hope, and trust. Tubman's presence anchors them, steady, unwavering, the embodiment of courage. And in these moments, folklore and fact merge seamlessly. The tapping of a cane, the hidden signals. The songs hum softly to guide footsteps. The shadows that seem to move with intent. All part of a rhythm, a code, a network of survival. The documents of history mark disappearance, capture, and fate unknown. The stories, the whispers, the songs give shape to what the records cannot. Every heartbeat, every breath, every glance is imbued with the memory and legend of those who came before. Finally, the group pauses at the edge of another forest clearing. Safe for the moment, yes, but aware that the journey stretches further. The moonlight glimmers on sweat-soaked faces, on mud-stained clothing. Tubman surveys the group, noting fatigue, fear, determination. The children cling to mothers. The adults glance at each other silently. A shared understanding. They have survived this night, for now. But the path to freedom remains long, perilous, and uncertain. And as you envision this, the mud, the water, the whispered instructions, the lanterns glowing faintly through the night, understand that every incident, every careful step, every near encounter is a thread in a tapestry woven from courage, terror, skill, and hope. And at its center moves one woman, Harriet Tubman, leading, guiding, protecting, through darkness, through danger, through uncertainty, toward the promise of freedom. The forest breathes a tense, expectant air as the party halts briefly near a shallow creek. The water glints dimly under the moonlight, currents rippling silently, deceptively calm. Tubman kneels at the bank, fingertips brushing the surface, feeling its flow, sensing where stones may be hidden beneath the murky water. She pauses, listening, The subtle hiss of wind, the distant bark of a dog, the occasional snap of a twig. Each sound a signal, each shadow a potential threat. Her eyes narrow, calculating the safest path. Every decision the difference between life and capture. The official records of escape attempts speak in sterile terms. Group crossed creek without incident. Escapees accounted for arrival recorded at safe house. The names listed initials, ages, descriptions are bare. Devoid of fear, hope, or desperation. The letters of abolitionists speak of movement, of timing, of logistics. But they cannot convey the pounding of hearts, the whispered prayers, the tension of every cautious step in the dark. Each fact is precise, but skeletal, requiring flesh, emotion, and memory to complete the story. And here the folklore asserts itself. Decades later, WPA interviews recount Tubman's uncanny intuition. She knew the dogs would come, one survivor recalls, before we could even hear them. Others describe dream warnings, premonitions that guided her decisions, signaling safe routes through flooded swamps, over treacherous ridges, and past patrols unseen. The line between human skill and something otherworldly blurs. And in these stories, the forests themselves seem alive. Listening, guiding, protecting those she leads. The party begins the creek crossing. Tubman at the front, scanning constantly. She signals subtly, a shift of her hand. A pause, a whispered word. The first child steps forward, slips slightly on a wet stone. Tubman's hand steadies him. She checks every step, ensuring the heavy sack carried by one of the men does not tip. Every motion deliberate, silent, calculated. The folklore remembers that the reeds bent slightly as she moved, as if the very plants knew her path, and the group followed unerring through this living, breathing network. Once across, they face a rising ridge, the incline steep and covered with loose soil and rocks. Branches snag clothing roots, threaten to trip. Every step is painstakingly slow. Every glance carries weight. Children clutch their mother's hands. The adults steady each other. Tubman pauses intermittently, signaling when to move, when to wait. The danger is palpable, the risk constant. Yet the pulse of hope grows, a rhythm like a heartbeat guiding them forward. The folklore deepens the tension. Whispered stories recall the midnight footsteps of Tubman and her group. Leaves rustling unnaturally. Shadows shifting in ways that seem deliberate. Signals carried by wind, water, and trees. Guiding warning communicating. One survivor decades later described how a song hummed softly in the night indicated that a patrol had passed and that it was safe to continue. These signals, invisible to outsiders, were as real and critical as any bridge or map. They move again through dense brush. Tubman leading, eyes scanning constantly. Each step is precise. Every breath measured. The documents mark arrival times and safe house locations. Arrived in Philadelphia at 3:00 a.m. Escaped through Dorchester County accounted for. But these records do not capture the improvisation, the tension, the human skill. The folklore does. Detailing the lanterns hidden in hollow trees, the quilts sewn with coded symbols, the tapping of canes on wooden floors. All signs meant to guide the lost through darkness. Night after night, she repeats this pattern. Guides one party after another. The records of patrols, of recapture attempts, of bounty notices reflect the danger. Yet the folklore emphasizes her extraordinary intuition. Sensing impending danger, interpreting subtle changes in wind, smell, sound. Her awareness extending beyond the natural into the almost supernatural. For those she guided, these signs were as real as the ground beneath their feet, as critical as the strength in their own hands and legs. The spiritual dimension grows in these tales. Ancestors walking unseen alongside the group, guiding, shielding, whispering. Some describe dreams that instructed them where to step, when to pause, when to turn. The folklore transforms fear into guidance, despair into hope. Every crossing, every river, every ridge is a collaboration between human skill and ancestral memory, between courage and superstition, between fact and story. By dawn, the group reaches a hidden cabin, lanterns glowing faintly, allies waiting, blankets, food, soft words of reassurance. Relief is palpable, yet every face reflects exhaustion, tension, and anticipation for the next leg. The journey is far from over. The documents record the logistics. The folklore preserves the humanity, the vigilance, and the almost mystical guidance that made each journey successful. And as the sun rises, illuminating the damp leaves and muddy paths, the forest holds its secrets still. The interplay of fact and legend creates a tapestry, a rhythm, a cadence that carries the pulse of courage, ingenuity, faith, and resilience. Harriet Tubman's figure remains central, her presence the spine of the narrative, moving silently, decisively, unwaveringly, through forests, swamps, and shadows, guiding countless lives toward the ever-distant promise of freedom. The official accounts mark movement success and escape. The folklore breathes life into each crossing, every whispered song, hidden symbol, and subtle gesture. Together they preserve the story, fact and legend intertwined. A testimony to human skill, courage, and the extraordinary presence of a woman who became more than a guide. She became a legend, a beacon, a living bridge from despair to freedom. Night has deepened into an almost impenetrable darkness. The forest alive with sounds that could be friend or foe. Every snap of a twig, every whisper of the wind, every rustle in the underbrush carries weight. Tubman leads her group forward with precision, eyes sharp, senses attuned. She pauses occasionally, listening, calculating. The faintest shift in air, the subtle movement of leaves, signaling with the tap of a cane or the slightest motion of her hand. Each gesture a silent command. They approach a swollen river, its water dark, fast, and unpredictable. Tubman kneels to gauge the depth, placing her fingers in the current, feeling its pull, its hidden eddies. A misstep here could mean disaster, drowning, capture, or exposure. She signals for the youngest to go first, guiding their steps, a hand on a shoulder, a whispered instruction. The adults follow carefully, balancing, pressing against each other for support. The weight of bundles, blankets, and children carefully distributed, every detail measured, every breath deliberate. And then a distant bark cuts through the night, sharp, urgent echoing across the water. Patrol dogs, or perhaps a stray. Every head freezes. Tubman crouches, scanning the darkness, signaling silently. The group presses low into the mud. Heartbeats pound. The seconds stretch like hours. The wind carries every sound, yet muffles enough to mask their presence. Tubman begins a serpentine path along the riverbank, shadow and silence blending. Every step a negotiation with fate. As they climb the opposite bank, roots and loose soil threaten their footing. Mud clings to boots, snagging clothing. Tubman steadies a child, adjusts a bundle, whispers encouragement. The forest itself seems to test them. Yet her presence steadies guides. A branch scratches an arm, a foot slips, but hands reach out. Reassurance supports survival. Every small act a thread holding the group together. Each gesture a lifeline. The folklore intensifies here. WPA interviews recount the midnight footsteps moving unseen through the forest. Leaves rustling in patterns that seem deliberate. Lanterns glowing faintly, signaling safety. Songs sung softly, each note carrying coded instructions. The children remember the rhythm. The adults remember the gestures. every detail, every nuance guided by Tubman, interpreted by those she led. A living code embedded in the night, real and necessary. Ahead lies a ridge, steep, slick with rain, every step dangerous. Tubman pauses, observing the patrol lights in the distance, listening to distant shouts, calculating their path. Each footstep must be precise, every glance weighted, every pause a moment of tension, every gesture a decision. The group mirrors her movements, silent, synchronized, each breath held. The night itself seems to respond. The wind, the trees, the shadows, all bending to the rhythm of the journey. They descend into a clearing, the moonlight cutting across the terrain. The party pauses, scanning. Children cling to mothers, adults supporting the elderly. Tubman signals guiding them through patches of visibility and shadow. Every sound could betray them, every misstep could endanger. And yet the pulse of hope drives them onward. The cadence of their footsteps matches the heartbeat of the forest, the rhythm of survival. A sudden shout echoes nearby, a patrol dog's barking, torches swinging. Tubman freezes, counts, signals, gestures. They drop to the ground, pressed low into the mud. The seconds stretch taut with tension. Every heartbeat seems magnified. Then slowly, carefully, they resume their movement. Serpentine, silent, invisible. Each motion deliberate, each step a negotiation with danger. The forest opens to a wide field. Tubman halts, scanning for the next signal. Safe house or cabin, faint lantern glimmer. Allies waiting silently. Blankets, food, whispered instructions. Relief floods the group, yet no one relaxes completely. Every eye searches, every hand grips tightly. The journey is far from over. The risk remains. The pulse of tension persists. Here the folklore and fact intertwine fully. The tapping of canes, the hidden lanterns, the quilt codes, the songs carried by the wind. All converge, creating a map invisible to outsiders. Every action has been documented partially in letters, reports, and logs. Yet the fear, the intuition, the human ingenuity is preserved only in whispered stories. The facts mark survival. The folklore marks the method, the courage, the life force of those guided. Tubman herself becomes almost ethereal, moving like a shadow, unseen yet commanding, leading, protecting, teaching. Every decision, every pause, every glance, vital. The river crossings ridge climbs forest paths, each a test of skill and courage. Every near miss, every whispered instruction, adding to the tapestry of legend. The pulse of hope, terror, faith, and calculation threads through every heartbeat, every step, every breath. Finally, as dawn breaks faintly over the horizon, the group reaches the edge of the last hidden clearing before open land. Relief, exhaustion, exhilaration. Faces, mud-streaked eyes wide, hands trembling. Yet in every movement, the imprint of Tubman's guidance. Her presence has held them together, through fear, danger, and darkness. The documents may note arrived safely at 3:00 a.m., but they cannot convey the living pulse of survival, the rhythm of shadow song and silent instruction. This is the apex, the culmination of every decision, every act of courage, every thread of folklore and fact. The climax of a night filled with peril, skill, and determination. Tubman, small in stature, yet vast in presence, remains the axis of their survival. She is Moses' guardian guide, a living bridge between despair and freedom. The forest breathes, the wind whispers, and the pulse of hope continues. And as you listen, imagine the mud, the water, the hidden signals, the soft glow of lanterns. Every heartbeat, every step, every whispered word, part of the cadence that carries them. Fact and folklore intertwined, courage and intuition merged. And Harriet Tubman remains at the center, unbroken, unwavering, guiding them toward the horizon, toward freedom. The dawn rises slowly over the distant hills, the sky pale tinged with gold and gray. The forest exhales after the tension of the night. Tubman's group stands at the edge of the clearing, exhausted, mud-streaked hearts still racing. Yet in their eyes, a spark, a pulse, a recognition that they have crossed a threshold, that they have survived the night. That freedom, though still distant, is no longer a dream, but a fragile, shimmering reality. The documents mark the end of this leg. Names accounted for, arrival times logged, safe house reached. Yet these facts are only a skeleton. They cannot convey the trembling hands of mothers holding children, the whispered prayers of men who have endured impossible fear, the quiet sighs of relief that mingle with sobs and laughter. The folklore carries this. The stories passed down through generations, the songs hummed softly to guide others, the coated quilts, the lanterns hidden in hollows. These are the living memory of survival, of ingenuity, of courage. Tubman herself remains central, the constant axis around which the stories revolve, small in stature but immense in presence. Eyes scanning the horizon, muscles relaxed only slightly, always ready. Her vigilance never ceases. She teaches, she protects, she leads. Her shadow stretches long over the forest floor, a symbol, a promise, an anchor. Those who have followed her carry her presence in memory and in spirit, the pulse of hope she instilled beating in their chests. Across the hills and rivers, across the swamps and ridges, the echoes of that night linger. Communities whisper of the woman who moves like a shadow, who vanishes only to reappear at the most critical moment. Tales of the midnight footsteps, of lanterns, glowing faintly of songs that carry instructions through wind and forest. These stories, though filtered through decades, preserve the essence of each crossing. The fear, the courage, the silent calculation, and the faith in survival. The aftermath stretches far beyond a single night. Beyond the clearing, beyond the safe houses, lives are reshaped. Families reunited, communities, inspired hearts emboldened. Yet for every success, there are whispers of those who were lost, captured, or vanished. Fate unknown, the records say. But folklore remembers them too. Their spirits imagined marching alongside the living, their courage etched into the pathways, the rivers, the forests. A continuum of hope and warning, of memory preserved and legacy endured. In the North, in Philadelphia, New York, and beyond, the names arrive in abolitionist letters in newspapers, in clandestine reports. Yet again, these facts are fragments, mere reflections of reality. The stories, the whispered tales, the coded songs. These preserve the human element, the lived terror, the ingenuity, the faith, the solidarity. They ensure that each crossing is remembered not just in record, but in spirit. Fact and folklore together, inseparable, creating a living archive of courage. And in the years that follow, Tubman continues her work, night after night. The forests, the rivers, the paths, the cabins, all become repositories of memory and legend. The songs, the signals, the hidden gestures carry forward, teaching those who come after, showing that freedom is navigated not only with skill, but with heart, instinct, and community. Every step forward is a lesson, every crossing a testament. The spiritual echoes remain, ancestors imagined alongside the living, guiding warning, lending strength. The folklore transforms fear into a form of instruction, despair into action. Every river crossed, every ridge climbed, every shadow navigated, carries this imprint. This is the space where human skill meets ancestral memory, where courage becomes legend, where fact and folklore intertwine to preserve a truth larger than any record. And as the sun rises fully, illuminating the forest, the fields, the paths once hidden in shadow, the group continues toward the horizon, hearts steadied by survival, eyes bright with resolve. Each person carries the rhythm of the journey within them. The silent cadence of footsteps whispers songs and gestures. This pulse of courage and hope, preserved in memory, in oral tradition, in spirit, in history. Harriet Tubman stands at the edge of the forest one last time, watching, assessing, ensuring all who followed her reach safety. She is both leader and guardian, small yet vast, fleeting yet immortalized in memory. The forest holds its breath. The wind sighs through the trees. The paths she has walked remain, hidden yet known, alive with the stories of those who survived, and those who will follow. Before this story closes, before the echoes fade, take a moment to feel the weight of the journey. The mud on boots, the cold water, the whispered songs, the tension, the hope. Imagine the forests alive with every heartbeat, the shadows carrying secrets, the night itself guiding teaching. Tubman's figure small yet vast, present at every turn, every crossing, every gesture, every act of courage, preserved in fact, immortalized in folklore. And as you reflect, remember to leave a comment. Where are you listening from? At what hour does the story reach you tonight? Share the pulse of your own heart as it resonates with theirs. For the journey of freedom, courage, and hope is never entirely past. It lives on, in memory, in song, in story. In the footsteps of those who walk still, guided by the legacy of Harriet Tubman. You have just witnessed one chapter from a history that refuses to be silenced. A story of courage, ingenuity, fear, and faith. Preserved in record, whispered in legend, living in memory. And if you wish to follow more of these untold stories, to walk the hidden paths of history, subscribe. For there are countless footsteps yet to be traced, countless voices yet to be heard.